For years, Melody Shari and Martell Holt looked like the couple everyone admired. They built businesses together, raised a family together, and became one of the most recognizable faces on Love and Marriage Huntsville. To viewers watching from the outside, they seemed like the definition of a power couple: successful, ambitious, attractive, and deeply connected. Their chemistry helped turn the show into a major success, and people became emotionally invested in their story because it felt real. But behind the smiles, the appearances, and the carefully maintained image, their relationship was slowly falling apart in ways the public couldn't fully see at first. And when the truth finally surfaced, everything changed. What once looked like a love story became one of the most talked about breakups on reality television. But surprisingly, the biggest shock didn't come from the betrayal itself. It came afterward, because after years of public drama, emotional tension, and endless headlines, Melody made a decision nobody could ignore. She walked away completely, not just from the marriage, but eventually from the show that had documented so much of their pain. And while fans were still trying to process what her departure meant, Martell suddenly broke his silence in a way that caught everyone off guard. His tone was calm, reflective, even emotional. Instead of anger, he spoke about growth, regret, and realizing someone's value after losing them. And almost instantly, people began asking the same question: was this genuine change or simply regret arriving too late? Because sometimes the hardest thing to watch isn't the breakup itself, it's watching someone realize what they destroyed only after everything is already gone. When Melody and Martell first became known to audiences, people were drawn to what they represented. They weren't just another reality TV couple surrounded by chaos and drama. They seemed driven, focused, and united by bigger goals. Together, they built businesses, expanded opportunities, and created the image of a couple growing side by side through ambition and hard work. Their relationship felt layered and authentic, which is why so many viewers connected to them emotionally. Fans watched them navigate marriage, parenthood, entrepreneurship, and fame all at once, and for a long time it looked like they were figuring it out together. But relationships rarely fall apart overnight. Usually, the damage begins quietly. Small disagreements turn into recurring arguments. Frustration builds slowly beneath the surface. And when a relationship is constantly exposed to public attention, those issues become even harder to escape. Every emotional moment becomes content. Every disagreement becomes discussion online. And eventually, privacy disappears completely. That pressure alone can damage even strong relationships. But in their case, the situation became far deeper than stress or communication problems. Then came the betrayal that changed everything. Suddenly, the relationship people once admired became one of the most discussed situations online. Viewers debated who was wrong, who deserved forgiveness, and whether the marriage could survive at all. Some people believed relationships could heal through honesty and accountability, while others felt certain actions permanently destroy trust. And while millions of opinions flooded social media, Melody and Martell were left trying to navigate the emotional wreckage of a marriage collapsing in front of the world. For Melody, the weight of constantly reliving those painful moments seemed exhausting. You could sense a shift over time. There was less emotional fighting and more emotional distance, less explaining and more quiet reflection. It felt like someone slowly reaching a point where survival mattered more than saving appearances. And eventually, it became clear that something inside her had changed permanently. One of the most interesting parts of this entire story was hearing Martell eventually admit that despite everything, Melody still treated him well for a long time. That statement stayed with people because it revealed something deeper. Even after being hurt publicly, Melody continued trying to hold things together for her family and for the life they had built together. But eventually, there comes a moment when a person realizes love alone cannot carry the weight of repeated disappointment. And when that realization happens, boundaries begin to replace emotional tolerance. that's exactly what people began noticing with Melody. Instead of constantly reacting publicly, she became quieter, more controlled, and more focused on protecting her peace. Her energy shifted away from defending herself and toward rebuilding herself. And then came the announcement that completely changed the conversation. After 9 seasons, Melody officially decided to leave Love and Marriage Huntsville. At first, many people assumed it was just another rumor. Reality television often thrives on speculation, so viewers weren't sure whether to believe it. But once it became official, people realized this decision carried emotional weight far beyond television. Leaving the show meant walking away from an environment deeply connected to some of the most painful chapters of her life. No more filming emotionally charged conversations. No more revisiting old wounds for entertainment. No more constantly being tied to a story she had emotionally outgrown. And what made the moment even more powerful was the way she handled it. There were no dramatic public breakdowns, no endless explanations, no attempts to convince people she made the right choice. She simply moved forward. And that silence became one of the strongest statements she could have made. Because sometimes healing looks less like speaking and more like finally deciding you no longer owe the world access to your pain. While Melody's departure immediately captured attention, what happened afterward created even more curiosity. Martell became unusually quiet. For days, people waited to hear what he would say. Social media discussions intensified because silence always creates speculation. Some people assumed he was angry, others thought he was trying to protect his image, and some believed he was finally reflecting on everything that had happened. Then, finally, he spoke. But what surprised people most wasn't just what he said, it was how he said it. His tone sounded calmer, softer, more reflective than many expected. Instead of focusing on blame, he talked about growth, understanding, and realizing someone's value after they're no longer part of your life. And almost immediately, reactions became divided. Some viewers genuinely believed his words reflected maturity. They saw someone finally acknowledging painful truths and understanding the consequences of his actions. But others weren't convinced. To them, it sounded like regret arriving only after the relationship was beyond repair. And honestly, both perspectives probably contain some truth, because growth is rarely simple. Real change doesn't happen through one speech or one emotional realization. It happens slowly, through consistent actions, difficult choices, and accountability repeated over time. That's why people remain cautious. Words can sound powerful in emotional moments, but lasting transformation is proven quietly over months and years. And deep down, audiences know that, which is why many people aren't just listening to Martell anymore. They're watching him carefully to see whether his actions eventually match the reflection he now speaks about publicly. Still, perhaps the most fascinating part of this entire situation is Melody's silence after all of it. She never rushed to respond publicly to Martell's comments. She didn't enter social media debates, she didn't try to correct narratives or emotionally revisit the past. And somehow, that silence felt louder than every interview and every public statement surrounding the situation. Because silence can mean many things. Sometimes it reflects anger, sometimes exhaustion, but other times silence means peace. It means someone has emotionally detached from the need to explain themselves anymore. And that's exactly what many people felt while watching Melody move forward. She no longer appeared focused on proving anything to anyone. Instead, she seemed focused on protecting her energy, her family, and the future she wants for herself moving forward. Meanwhile, Martell still appeared emotionally connected to what was lost, and that emotional difference became impossible not to notice. It felt like watching two people standing in completely different stages of life, one still reflecting on the past, the other already building a future beyond it. And maybe that's why this story resonated so deeply with audiences, because beyond the reality television drama, it reflects something painfully human, the realization that sometimes people grow apart after trust is broken. Sometimes love exists, but healing together becomes impossible. And sometimes clarity only arrives after everything falls apart. In the end, this isn't just a story about fame, betrayal, or public relationships. It's about accountability,
healing, and the difficult process of learning how to move forward after disappointment changes everything. For Melody, this chapter feels like freedom and self-preservation. For Martell, it feels like reflection and realization. And for the audience watching from the outside, it serves as a reminder that relationships are shaped not only by love, but by choices, actions, consistency, and respect. Because sometimes life doesn't give people the ending they imagined. Sometimes it gives them clarity instead. And once that clarity arrives, the only thing left to do is move forward, separately, differently, but hopefully wiser than before.